Hey, Fidelity. How can I remember to invest every month?
With the Fidelity app, you can choose a schedule and set up recurring investments in stocks and ETFs.
Oh, that sounds easier than I thought.
You got this.
Yeah, I do. Now, where did I put my keys?
You will find them where you left them.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE, SIPC.
The Nevada legislature's last session was a little rough, with the governor vetoing a record 75 bills, and then there was that special session to get the A's stadium funding through the finish line. So what can we expect this time around? Today on CityCast Las Vegas, we talk with Nevada Current's April Corbin-Gurnis about the biggest potential showdowns in this year's session. It's Wednesday, February 12th. I'm David Figler, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. All right, April, what, from your perspective, are the biggest showdowns for this 2025 legislative 4 months of chaos?
Well, the biggest showdown will be over the state budget and where that money is. I think that the Democrats are pretty aware that Lombardo is sticking to his no new taxes thing, which means that everybody's going to be fighting over that same pot of money. So where those priorities lie will come out. The budget bills are always super argued about because one of them needs 2/3 to pass. So you have to have bipartisan support in both chambers this time around, and you need the governor to sign it. So there's a lot of pressure there in terms of what that looks like. And it's used as a sort of the negotiation point for that. And that's off to a bad start.
Yeah, I want to talk about that bad start. But at the end of the session, if you will, the budget always gets signed, right?
Yes.
There's never been a time when it wasn't signed. They figure it out.
It's
just ugly.
It's ugly. And certainly last session, it wasn't passed by the deadline where it's supposed to pass at. They got to 11:59 p.m. on sine die and didn't sign it. So they had to have a one-day special session the next day to sign it. So it is always something that gets passed. It has to get passed. The state needs to operate right. But it's something that changes a lot in terms of last-minute bills that are signed and what things sneak by at the end. There's a lot of negotiations that happen with it.
Yeah, clearly. And a lot of it, I think, happens behind closed doors, which sort of sucks for us, the public looking in. But you did mention, April, that it got off to a rocky start. And I remember seeing these headlines that the Dems were just going after the governor for putting together a broken budget, or that there was something missing. Did any of that get resolved? And is there any residue from that initial salvo of stuff? I don't even know what to call it, like anger and accusation.
Yes. So the governor, the way the state budgeting process works is that the governor presents to the state legislature his executive recommended budget. And this year he submitted that. And then the Democrats immediately came out and said, this budget is not structurally sound, is the phrase they use. They said there's a structural deficit of $335 million. They actually didn't know the exact amount, but the governor's office confirmed that there were problems with that. They lost.
Okay, I'm sorry, and I'm interrupting you, but this is just one of those situations where waitress, this bill doesn't look right. I'm not really sure what's wrong here. Can you, I'll take it back. And then the manager comes out and is yeah, there was a problem here. So what did the restaurant give to the customers who noticed that the bill was wrong? Sorry, metaphor. Bad me.
They fixed it. They submitted 48 amendments to change.
They meaning the governor's office.
The governor's office, yes.
Okay.
So the governor's office submitted 48 budget recommendations. It was sort of unheard of in terms of the executive budget. Most of that, if you wanted to get into the weeds of it, didn't change a lot of priorities. A lot of it was sort of financial accounting stuff. So changing things that were reoccurring expenses to one-shot expenses, meaning that they're not assumed and they're sort of using money that we have currently but don't expect. There's a lot of accounting stuff that's going on behind the scenes. And ultimately, the legislature has the budget and they're the one that passes it. But certainly getting off to this rocky a start does not suggest that we're happy to work together.
That's one budget battle. What else is on your radar?
Yeah, one thing that we haven't seen play out yet, but could play out in dramatic, catastrophic ways is what impact federal action is going to have, right? So,
federal action. So you're basically talking the Trump / whoever else is in charge of things administration?
Yeah, President Musk and his
you.
No, so federal action. So like Medicaid is being targeted by Republicans in the U.S. House for dramatic cuts, and that would have a huge impact on Nevada potentially, right? So we're talking billions of dollars that could potentially be lost depending on how dramatic the Congress chooses to sort of cut Medicaid funding.
Let me ask you this, because Medicaid funding has been coming up quite a bit in conversations, from everything concerning homelessness and mental health in our community to just people having access to health care who wouldn't have it otherwise. Where does the state legislature come in with these sort of federal actions? In other words, why would a federal decision require our state actors to be in some manner of showdown themselves?
Yeah, well, because of the funding mechanism. So Medicaid is funded through a mixture of federal dollars and state dollars, but the federal government picks up well over 50% of the cost of Medicaid. And then it's actually, I think, closer to 90% of expanded Medicaid. So like a certain part of those Medicaid, they pay for a lot of it. So if those cuts happen at the federal level, then the state has to decide, well, are we going to cut Medicaid services in state? Are we going to try and fight the federal government to not sort of devastate these people who are relying on Medicaid here in the state? And what services do we cut, and what does that look like? So it'll be a big battle, because you could drain, for perspective, for people who don't know the state budget very well, you could drain the rainy day fund like 4 times and still have cuts to Medicaid. Like it's massive. It's billions and billions of dollars.
Oh, yeah, because that rainy day fund is no slouchy bank account. That's not a baby piggy bank. That's over $1 billion, right?
Yes, and you could drain it several times and still have to cut Medicaid services if you were to take out all of the federal dollars. So obviously it wouldn't be that dramatic probably, but they're certainly watching and very worried about it. And then outside of Medicaid, same thing goes with the Department of Education, because there's a lot of federal funding for education programs as well. So that could lead to potentially huge cuts and huge changes, and the state legislature is very worried about it.
Hey friends, if you love CityCast, there's a way to do us a solid by helping us win Best Vegas Podcast in the Las Vegas Weekly's Best of Vegas Awards. Even if you only just want to vote for this category, it literally takes 10 seconds. So head on over to LasVegasWeekly.com/Best of Vegas 2025 and find Best Vegas Podcasts under Arts and Entertainment. Las Vegas is putting out great weekly and monthly pods for sure, but if you found even one episode of our daily podcast to be indispensable, whether it was our in-depth reporting about the Tesla tunnels, life in a sex club, changing gambling odds, or the best new restaurants you've never heard of, we'd find your vote for us to be an excellent thank you. So head on over to LasVegasWeekly.com/Best of Vegas 2025 and vote for CityCast Las Vegas.
You know what's smart? Enjoying a fresh gourmet meal at home that you didn't have to cook. Meet Factor, your loophole in the laws of mealtime. Chef-crafted meals delivered with a tap, ready in just 2 minutes. You know what's even smarter? Treating yourself without cheating your goals. Factor is dietitian approved, chef prepared, and you plated. Pretty smart, huh? Refresh your routine and eat smart with Factor. Learn more at factormeals.com.
There's some others on your radar, right?
Yes. So one thing that's really gearing up is a proposal backed by Uber, the rideshare giant, to cap attorneys' fees in civil cases.
Wait, what? Why are the cars driving around at the airport worried about attorneys getting paid?
Wild concept, right? Well, so I'll let you know. Now,
As an attorney, I need to know the answer here, and I will never use an Uber again if your answer doesn't satisfy me.
Well, to be clear, Uber is not promoting the fact that they are behind this. It's just very clear that they're behind it. The official title of their proposal is under the Nevadans for Fair Recovery, and they're promoting it as a reform that benefits individuals and makes sure that those greedy lawyers on the billboards don't take all of the fees. and that they get the victim gets the settlement money from a lawsuit. That's their argument.
So most lawyers have this kind of idea, like, we don't get paid unless we win the case or successfully negotiated, and they have different structures. It's called a contingency. It could be less than 30%. It could be, I've seen it at 50%. I'm wondering if it might be more for some levels. But this proposal, it seems, wants to say, no, you can't, as lawyers, really make too much money off of your job.
Yes. So they want to cap it at 20%.
Total 20. So
20%.
That's
yes.
significant. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there are people who are opposed to this. It was a group of trial lawyers have sort of banded together, and their name is under Uber Sexual Assault Survivors for Legal Accountability.
Subtle.
Yes, and their argument is that Uber is backing this because nationwide Uber has had hundreds of lawsuits related to Uber drivers assaulting passengers. And so they're facing a lot of legal action on this. So they're saying that Uber wants to cap this fee so that victims will not be able to find lawyers, because they argue that the lawyers, they need to have those contingency fees, that structure that you just talked about, in order to make it worthwhile for anybody to take on such cases. So it's a really battle between them.
So where is this Uber Inc. versus the billboard guys and gals? Where does that settle in the legislature?
So Uber attempted to get this on the ballot in 2026. So they did a petition initiative, got the 200,000 signatures that you need to get to qualify, and they submitted that to that. But then the Nevada Supreme Court ruled the ballot question to be insufficient and legally deficient. So they threw it out.
Do they have champions in the state legislature?
They're certainly going to try. They're certainly going to. They've already started backing and airing advertisements related to it. So they're still pushing it. And I don't know yet, as of now, whether or not they've found someone to sponsor such a bill. But given the legislature and the amount of money they have, I'm sure that they're gonna be open to a conversation about that. So it's early in the process, but it's definitely something that is not going away, and we're going to hear more about.
Yeah, there are more than a representative amount of lawyers and trial lawyers in the Nevada state legislature, and a lot of funding goes from those trial lawyers to all the legislators. But yeah, like you say, Uber is not short on cash or lobbyists. But that's another story, another day. No one wants. I don't have lobbyists, April. But you know who does? The Culinary Union. And I understand that room cleaning bill from last session that was so controversial and caused so many issues is possibly coming back, but I don't know more than that. So fill me in.
Yes.
We should describe what that bill is.
Yes. So, well, to understand this, you have to go back to 2020. And in 2020, during the COVID pandemic, the state legislature adopted a room cleaning bill to mandate that casino hotel rooms be cleaned every day. It was a proposal backed by Culinary. It was sold as, hey, in this time of COVID craziness, we need to show the world that we really take cleanliness seriously. We have to do this every
It's
time.
Next to godliness. I get it.
Next to godliness. That's what they say, right? So 2023 session, the state legislature comes in and says, we're going to remove this from state law because it was always intended as a COVID era thing. And we're kind of over COVID, right? So we're past it. Go deal with that on your own. And it was very controversial. Culinary fought it. The gaming industry, also very powerful, obviously, was very much for removing it. And so that was a battle. The bill ended up getting passed, but now it's back. So
the bill to remove it got passed.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, the bill to remove it got passed.
And now it's back.
I'll say the bill is being sponsored by State Senator Lori Rogich, who
Republican
state
senator.
Yes.
Okay.
And who notably defeated Dallas Harris. And Rogich was endorsed by the Culinary in a very close race. So the ties are there in terms of sort of being an obvious sort of connection.
Dallas Harris, famously a very progressive Democrat.
Yes.
She voted against the continuation of the cleaning bill. She got targeted by Culinary, and Culinary was able to knock her off, or at least help. Lori Rogich obviously was a good candidate, but now here we are, and she's going to sponsor, Lori Rogich is going to sponsor the Culinary bill?
Yes. Senator Rogich has sort of presented it in media so far as something that is designed to help illegal cannabis use, because that's a major problem, which seems like a weird sell to me. But, that's certainly the conversation and how they're trying to frame it.
I would just want to try to follow that one. Because people are smoking up in their hotel rooms, it's important to be in there every day cleaning up bongs and roaches and stuff.
Yeah, I guess.
Are they suggesting that culinary housekeeping people should be spies? What? I don't follow the logic there.
It's something she will hopefully answer in hearings. It hasn't received any public discussion yet.
All right. Well, that's what we're doing. We're saying the showdowns to come. That's very interesting.
Showdowns to come. Yes. So that will be really interesting to see what that looks like and how open lawmakers are, because ostensibly you have two powerful things at bay. You have the culinary versus gaming industry, which doesn't want this, right? The gaming industry's perspective is this is something that should be determined in union contracts and negotiations in private rather than publicly decided by lawmakers, which...
Well, I am interested to see if the Democrats who lost one of their own over this stinking bill are afraid that they might get targeted if they don't support, or if they're going to be a little vengeful on behalf of their fallen colleague. But with the Republican sponsoring it, it's all very interesting for people who watch. And that actually leads me to my next question about the weird shifting of gears, perhaps. Jessica Hill, the great political reporter from the Review Journal, recently reported that Assembly Dems are looking to override 4 of Lombardo's vetoes from 2023, including 2 of those housing measures that went up in flame that I think we sort of alluded to. First off, April, how does that override work a session later? And is there any chance that they would have enough votes to do that, given all this stuff we're talking about?
Yeah. So when the governor vetoes a bill, he or she, but it's always been a he, has 5 days to veto it. So if a bill passes when there are fewer than 5 days left before the end of the session, or if he vetoes a bill after the session has already ended, they get sent to the next legislature, which is why a bunch of bills were from the last legislature are here today, because they were vetoed and there was no opportunity for the act.
They're just in a lost and found box, wherever people keep that stuff at the end of the session.
Exactly. They were pulled up from the lost and found, and then most of them were sort of thrown out and said, all right, good effort, whatever. But as you mentioned, the Assembly Dems pulled out 4 that they put sort of on the back burner in the Nevada state legislature. And so the process to override them, they would need 2/3 votes in both houses. And Democrats don't have 2/3 in either house. So there would need to be some bipartisan support, meaning one, Republican, to vote with it in one case. So whether or not that is going to happen, veto overrides are extremely rare. I can't think of one that's happened since I've been covering the legislature, which is a few sessions now. It's extremely rare, I think. And I think Jessica, the RJ reporter, sort of explains this, is that it is more of a show of where priorities lie. And these are the issues that we would like to see addressed, more than it is a sort of actual, we're going to override it. Because it would not behoove any Republican to go against the governor and vote with the Democrats on something to override a veto, right?
Yeah. So this is just setting up pieces on the chessboard, knowing that this queen's not going to make it to the, I don't know, again, with a bad metaphor, April. Well, let's just talk about housing then, straight up. I mean, in the last legislative session, Lombardo vetoed the 5 main housing bills, which you could categorize as tenant protections. Will any of those bills be revived this year, assuming that the veto override does fail?
Yeah, I think already some of them have already been introduced in other bills. So it's certainly all of those bills, all of the housing tenant protection bills that failed last session, whether they failed in the bill form or whether or not they made it to the governor's desk and were vetoed. All of them are being promoted again by housing advocates because they say nothing much has changed between now and then. So they will be pushing for those same things.
We definitely should mention that we are in the middle of an eviction crisis. It did not go away. It's only getting worse. We keep hearing about whatever you want to call it, affordable housing or attainable housing, not having enough of it. I know the governor talked about these sort of things from the developer side in his State of the State address, but the Dems want to get certain kind of caps for elderly folks, or at least they want to make sure that there's more fairness in the process of getting people thrown out onto the streets. Is any of that going to jive, or is the conversation going to be redirected into this attainable housing, this new nomenclature?
Governor Lombardo, as you mentioned, has a housing bill that's supposed to come. It hasn't been introduced yet. What we know of it so far is that it doesn't appear to mention rent or tenant protections at all. And it's much more focused on the developer side. It's much more focused on building more homes for people to live in, rather than what happens if you happen to rent one of those homes. So it is going to be something that the Democrats are going to have to probably negotiate into either that bill or a different bill, or somewhere else, rather than being something that is a priority from the Republicans in the legislature, unfortunately. But that's just kind of the state and how it is.
Yeah, lest they meet the same fate as last time. I mean, there's that whole bill about summary eviction. Nevada's the only one in the entire United States that makes it the tenant's responsibility to do all the legal stuff if they're getting kicked out, which, and interesting.
I will say, out of the housing bills, summary eviction tends to be the one that people bring up as having the most potential to go somewhere. I think that people on both sides recognize that the system that exists is kind of messed up. So I think that there is maybe an appetite for having that conversation. But something like rent caps, we're already seeing ads on TV. I saw one the other day during a hockey game saying, call your legislature and say no to rent hikes, like rent caps.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that the legislative push is going to be a lot harder on that side. But
yeah, I've seen that too. And well, we'll see how that one all pencils out. I guess there is going to be a lot more than even what we've talked about, because that's how it goes. But I'm wondering, in closing, April, if there's anything new this session that you think Las Vegans would be like, whoa, and definitely want to follow.
You know, it's not a major...
Or more like, whoa.
I like the phrasing there. It's maybe not the biggest issue to a lot of people, but I've done a lot of reporting recently on psychedelic medicines. So there
like
was
mushrooms, magic mushrooms.
Exactly, magic mushrooms. So that issue is going to be coming out again. It was introduced. There were several bills introduced last session, sort of related to that. They got sort of watered down into a study, and now that coalition of people who are pushing that are back for this next legislative session to try and push sort of a pilot program to actually use psychedelics. And so
for depression and some other stuff.
Yeah, for depression, PTSD, opioid use. There's a lot of uses for it that go beyond, having fun or whatever. It is a medicinal purpose, and they're trying to push that and hoping to have that conversation. I think it's something that is, like I said, not the biggest issue, but something that a lot of people have been passionate about, and that tends to get a lot of attention because people are really open to the idea of finding ways to address mental health in Nevada. And so that's a conversation that's going to be happening that I think will be exciting to see.
Another tool in the toolbox to help people with all their mental health issues. Well, I'm going to be looking at the red traffic lights. I think that's going to be very controversial, privacy versus safety, and it's all being pushed very hard by the current sheriff of Clark County, who himself recently was in an accident that a red light camera would not have prevented, and he got cited for that. So interesting to see how that'll shake down as well. Always fun watching those 4 months of just people going at it, and I don't even know how you do it, April, so thank you for covering this sort of stuff, and thanks for explaining it all to us here on CityCast Las Vegas.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
That's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed the show, go tell a friend. You could also rate our show, give us a bunch of stars, please, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Till then, stay lucky. Yeah, hold on. That's my dog. Spark, go to your crate. Good boy. that.
Your
so
dog
walk.
listens. See, mine
He
is
does that
like,
walk. He does that walk like this. He looks over.
oh.
And it just goes like this.